Troy Carr. Here. Jamie Clapham. Here. Katie Urban. Here. Donna Moore. Here. Walt Swan.
Here.
Angela Rafferty. Here. Christine Stephenson. Here. Marissa Bondsness.
Here.
Alina Braun.
Here.
And Warren Merrill is absent.
Right, thank you. I'll invite everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we do not have an invocation tonight, so I will entertain a motion to approve the proposed agenda.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the proposed agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Motion carries. This time, we're gonna have sharing the success. And who's in charge?
Yes, Sarah is in charge of
Okay.
that with the Rapid City Area Schools Foundation.
Hello, everybody. So I'm Sarah. I'm the Executive Director of the Rapid City Public School Foundation. Thank you so much for having us. We just kind of wanted to share the success of what we've done so far this year in the school district. So I'm going to have our grants co-chair come talk about some of the grants that we've awarded, and then I'll talk about the Johnson Trust, and then Gretchen will come up and talk about our above and beyond.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dustin Calhoun. I'm the co-chair for the grants committee. Oh, I'll just hold it. Grants committee for the Public School Foundation Board. Just wanted to share, we've done several grants this year in total. $7,315. A couple of the cool grants that I'd like to highlight. We did one for Meadowbrook Elementary School, was a fork farm hydroponic grow system that they're going to do over there, which is pretty cool. They're going to use the 5th grade students to kind of mentor the younger students, and they're going to do everything internal and cultivate seeds for the following year. So really cool grant that we did there. One that I'm personally invested in is a grant that we did for General Beetle. They are going to do a guitar program, an after-school guitar program, and we are hopefully going to get to see them perform some of their songs. They had planned to go to some of the old folks' homes and retirement homes in town and play songs for them. So we're really kind of looking forward to that. But so far we've given out 6 grants in total, or 5 grants in total this year.
The nice thing about the grants is every year it changes, like different goals for the year. And another one that Christine and I were just talking about is the Morning Nest also is a grant that we gave to Wilson Elementary. And it was a pretty innovative one that their counselor was seeing some kids coming in kind of in distress in the mornings. And what the students are able to come in and just kind of have a slower morning, maybe get their hair done, do some, teach how to do some general hygiene things. So that was a really innovative one. Just to, like that might not be every year in that school, but this year that school needed a different way to start their day. The other one that we are pretty excited about that we got we are administering the Johnson Trust for the school district. And we already had 3 withdraws, 2 from the science department. One of them is purchasing trail cams at Raider Park so they can use their biology classes and look at the animals there. The other one that is really cool is the music department is commissioning a piece specifically for their 9th grade band. They're performing at the state conference in February. And so they're actually working with a composer that is making a piece specifically for them. And the composer is coming out to the state conference and is going to present that piece. So that's a pretty fun thing that we were able to help with as well. And then just after we have I'm going to have Gretchen go to Above and Beyond, but then also coming up very quickly, we will be having Teacher of the Year. That's going to be in February. All the names are actually due to me by Friday from the schools. So that's going to be fast and furious. And then, then it will be Evening of Excellence too. So before we know it, we're going to be trugging along. Spring is very busy for the foundation.
I'm Gretchen Birkin. I'm the head of the Above and Beyond Awards. And this fall, we celebrated many school employees who demonstrated excellence every day. Staff, students, and parents can nominate district staff to go above and beyond. And then twice a year, we give out those awards in various schools. And you can refer to the list below, but we are excited to celebrate the teachers, counselors, building and grounds, literacy teachers, special education teachers, social workers, secretaries, interventionists, culinary specialists, paraprofessionals, librarians, youth engagement coordinators, and nurses from across the school district. And it's so fun to go into the schools and surprise them. And this year they didn't know again ahead of time that they were going to be presented with these awards. And so it was so thrilling, and it's always emotional to see the excitement from that. The next Above and Beyond drawing will be held in early May. And the sponsor in the fall was the Community Bank. Black Hills Community Bank. And so we are so grateful for their donation. And the one in the spring, the donators will be the All Metal Manufacturing business. And so you can refer to the list below to see all of the recipients of those awards. And again, it was a wonderful experience. I'm looking forward to it again in the spring.
And we had a record number of 428. That was because we actually went through, and then after that, we even got more. So our spring one I'm anticipating is going to be very large as well.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, board members, can you all, Sarah, just hold on, we probably have some questions. Well, we do have one question.
Yeah.
Mrs. Urban.
Just to comment, I'm on the board too, and it's been a joy to be part of because you just get to give money away, which is pretty great to a bunch of people that are really, really deserving. But I also wanted to mention that the foundation just received an award, I guess is how I'm
Yeah.
basically on the day of giving, everyone on the board donated, and because of that, we were entered into some sort of a scholarship. You should explain it. It's-
Yeah, so we applied for, it's the Day of Giving for South Dakota, and they do different challenges. And this is the first time ever that we challenged the district leaders, we challenged the principals, and we challenged our board to even give 100%, even if it was a couple dollars. Well, our board for the first time ever gave 100%. Well, then we got put into a drawing, and then they matched it on the state level. So we got an additional $2,400 to go towards. So it was like even, I don't know, it was a really big shock, and it was really extra special since it was our first year, all giving 100%. So it was pretty great. Oh, yes.
Any other board members have any?
I just wanted to comment that if the General Beetle Band wants to do a little performance for us at
Oh.
some point while we're filing
let her
it here.
know.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Would be good.
You just got even more in the.
Make sure you get his lights.
Thank you. Yes.
All right, thank you all very much. Okay, we have no open forum requests, which means we have no response to open forums. At this time, our student reports, and up first, Central High School, Ms. Bonnes.
Okay, good evening, board. I would like to begin tonight's report by highlighting a few of the events I discussed at the last meeting. To start, Student Council hosted our community bingo event last night, which was very successful. We had roughly 250 individuals of all ages in attendance, and many won amazing gift baskets and prizes donated by local businesses. In addition, we collected 3 large tubs full of canned food donations at the door, which will be distributed through the community. Our Christmas blood drive, hosted by the anatomy and physiology classes, also occurred last Friday, and it was likewise a great success. We were able to collect 103 units of blood, enough to save up to 309 lives. It was a wonderful and unifying experience to be able to donate alongside many of my peers, faculty members, and community participants. As for an update on our library, staff will be welcome to utilize it this Friday, and students will be officially welcomed back into the space directly after break. So please stay tuned as the official date for a ribbon cutting ceremony will be announced shortly. I am also proud to announce that Central was the school that donated the most teddy bears for the Rush Teddy Bear Collection Contest, which were distributed to the hospital's pediatric unit. Also, a big shout out to our sophomore class for leading this effort with the most donations across all grade levels. As we approach winter break, Central continues in full spring with Christmas spirit. Last week, we held a full week of Christmas-themed dress-up days for students and staff with themes such as holiday movie characters and ugly sweaters. It was an especially fun experience to see the Grinch and Rudolph walking through our hallways. And this week, students are preparing to head into final exams for their classes, which begin tomorrow. As for recent activities, basketball season is now fully underway, and our varsity boys team won both of their first games. Both the girls and boys teams will play against Huron this Friday night, December 19th, so please show up. Wrestling is also continuing its season, and both the girls and boys competed today at the Monument, where the girls team won the LNI. They will also be competing this Friday and Saturday in Gillette, Wyoming. Recent activities in the Fine Arts Department include the Winter Choral Concert held last Thursday night, and the Winter Festival Concert taking place this Thursday at 7 p.m. And finally, a brief update on the speech and debate team. They took first place as a team in Spearfish 2 weekends ago and had 11 students place in the top 3 for their respective individual events. With that, I'd love to close by wishing you all a Merry Christmas and by saying once a cobbler, always a cobbler. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, very good report. Board members, any questions or comments for Ms. Bonnes? Oh, Mrs. Clapham.
Really briefly, and I'm sure Mr. London, whoever, we're so proud of you guys. Like, just, it's so great to see our students involved and active and giving, and also just having fun being at school. And you know that Dean, like you can clearly, I'm a very Christmas, Christmas spirit person. And I think it just changes the whole vibe at school and brings a good energy. And I love seeing that. So great job, students and staff and administration. And I'll have to come visit more next Christmas.
Right. Anybody else? Right, again, thank you. From Stevens, Ms. Braun.
All right, good evening, board. The first thing I want to cover tonight is the alternate schedule for finals for the rest of the week at Stevens. To give teachers more time to administer tests or watch presentations, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week will have 3 classes each on them. On Wednesday, students will go to periods 1, 2, and 4. On Thursday, 3, 6, and 5. And on Friday, 7, 8, and 0. Each day, there's an hour-long lunch, and it is open campus for all students, including freshmen. Our raters have been preparing for finals, and many students had tests last week as teachers finished up units before the break. So our students have been working very, very hard. And Stevens also takes attendance during finals week very seriously. If a student is unable to be at school during finals week, they must fill out a form to be allowed to take their finals early. And last Wednesday, our Student Leadership Advisory Council met in the morning. SLAC, I know it's a very fitting acronym for our student leaders. But SLAC discussed a climate and culture survey that will be distributed to students at Stevens. Historically, the lowest average questions on district-wide surveys at Stevens are, I like coming to school most days, and students at SHS treat each other with kindness and respect. We are putting out another survey to address these low numbers, and while we are never going to make kids want to come to school every single day, we want Stevens to be a place where all students feel respected and comfortable. On the survey, we are asking students what makes them excited to come to school and what makes them least excited about coming to school. We are also asking for suggestions on how to make Stevens a better school. We hope that this survey will give us ideas on how to keep improving our school. And as I mentioned earlier, Stevens has a mascot again. Very exciting. So for the first time since 2021, and we will be holding mascot tryouts during basketball games this winter to find kids with enough school spirit to don the heavy head of our mascot. We hope having a mascot at games and events will help them feel more fun. And to give our mascot a little break, our activities director, Mr. Karn, came up with a fun halftime game, The Masked Singer. A Stevens teacher will record their voice and stand with the mascot head during halftime of basketball games. Students will then be able to vote for who they think is under the mask. We are hoping to increase student engagement at games and think our new Raider mascot is the way to do so. The students are getting antsy and they're very ready for break. So to try to keep them engaged, we have several Christmas events going on at Stevens this week. Today and yesterday, Stevens students were blessed with the arrival of Santa and Mrs. Claus to take photos with them. Our homecoming king and queen, Drayson Paulson and Mia Siriano, generously gave their time to make students at Stevens smile. This week, Student Council also sponsored dress-up days to put kids in the Christmas spirit, like Ugly Sweater Day, Christmas characters, holiday PJs, crazy socks, and red versus green. And last week, the Stevens Raiders basketball team kicked off their season. On Monday, the Raider girls boasted an impressive win over Douglas, and our boys played Pierre on Friday. Our boys have a new head coach this year, Brandon Yellowrobe, and under his instruction, our boys are thriving. Both teams have high hopes for this season. And Stevens is also sending a hand games team to the Lakota Nation Invitational. The Stevens team is made up of 8 members of the Mitakuye Oyashini All Are Related Club. The team has previously participated in hand games at Native American Culture Day and previous LNI tournaments. They've been practicing 3 days a week after school and have made ribbon skirts and ribbon shirts for the tournament. All members of the team are very excited to represent SHS at this incredible tournament. And my staff spotlight for this week is Bob Julius. Mr. Julius teaches AP Pre-Calculus and AP Physics 1. Mr. Julius is a bright spot at Stevens, always delighting students with his show-stopping looks for dress-up weeks, like a full box for Barbie Day. He had a box, yeah. Mr. Julius went to the South Dakota School of Mines and Black Hills State University, and he has been teaching at Stevens for 6 years. Mr. Julius is a teacher because he loves to help people learn and because he loves to interact with high school students and help them through this chapter of life. For fun, Mr. Julius loves to hike and he loves to play music. Merry Christmas.
All right, thank you. Again, another very good report. Board members, any questions or comments for Ms. Braun? All right, ladies, again, thank you very much. This time we have our superintendent report, Dr. Thompson.
I just want to say good luck on finals, ladies. And if you have to leave because we do a lot of talking, we won't judge.
I have four, what I hope are brief topics to share with you tonight, including an update on the governor's budget proposal, the House and Senate proposal regarding title funding, our federal programs position, and winter recess, which I was surprised nobody mentioned. So first of all, the governor's budget proposal. I'm sure you all heard the governor has proposed a 0% increase in funding for K-12 schools for the 26 fiscal year. Because enrollment is down statewide, what people don't realize is that that actually results in a $12.8 million decrease in total K-12 school funding. This is in contradiction to South Dakota Codified Law 13.10.1, which says that educational funding must be increased by 3% or the rate of inflation, whichever is less. Choosing not to follow this law would mean that districts cannot keep up with the pace of rising costs or inflation. It will be very difficult for schools to provide compensation increases for staff, including our teachers and our administrators. And schools will fall further and further behind financially. Most schools in South Dakota, including Rapid City area schools, are already facing reductions in funding due to a decline in student enrollment, which just further compounds the negative impact of this flat or reduced funding. Mr. Sassy has helped with projections that show that Rapid City area schools would lose about $2.2 million in state aid under this proposal, or $1.8 million in general fund revenue. Meanwhile, our costs for things like insurance, utilities, transportation, and supplies will just continue to increase. And teacher pay would likely continue to fall behind. South Dakota has made some progress in the last few years, rising to 46th in the nation for average teacher salary, but flat funding would likely push that back down. This will be one of our top issues this legislative session, as it creates a potential for up to a $5.5 million budget deficit for Rapid City area schools. Not to bring down the Christmas spirit. But I mean, the governor's budget is only a starting point. The legislature could choose to honor the funding formula and state statute and restore that inflationary increase. There are several options available to them, such as restoring sales tax from 4.2% to 4.5%, which could generate an estimated $105 million. They could reduce cash reserves from the 12.5% proposed by the governor down to the required 10%, which could generate an estimated $70 million. They could also choose to use the $14 million that the governor left undesignated to go towards schools. So they do have some options available to them. And we just have to advocate, because 0% increasing would be devastating for us.
Really, this probably sounds like a really elementary question, but so like we have this codified law and state statute, like why doesn't it have teeth, I guess is my question. Like if we say this is what we have to do, then why do they not actually have to do that?
It is a good question. I wouldn't call it elementary at all. My guess is the reason it doesn't have teeth is because they made the law and they can just change the law. Does anybody have a better answer than that?
They're not supposed to change the law.
No?
They're just proposing to ignore the law.
Yeah, and technically they didn't follow the law last year either with a 1.25% increase. That would not have kept pace with inflation or be 3%. So it wouldn't be the first time that it was not followed. We also need to watch the House and Senate proposals at the federal level regarding title funding. They have two very different proposals out there, with the Senate proposing level funding for our title grants, which would have a neutral effect on us. And the House proposing significant reductions to the tune of $4 billion to Title I and the elimination of Title II and Title III. That could result in a potential loss of $6 million a year in Title I funds if they were all taken. Now, they're just saying a reduction, so it probably wouldn't be all of that 6 million. And then $1.2 million in Title II funds. So we're obviously in favor of the Senate proposal on that one. Moving on to our federal programs position. That position was posted today. Some of the roles and responsibilities have been shifted slightly between directors. That is why I provided the updated draft organizational chart for you tonight. Basically, they were just reorganized to make sure that staff supervision and grant management were aligned so that we didn't have that split between two directors. The job description was updated and evaluated by the Human Resources Director, who completed a classification review and determined that the position would still be a director level position, even if we took as many responsibilities and duties off of that position as possible. The position is consistent with the expectations and responsibilities of our other director positions. It carries district-wide authority, programmatic leadership, regulatory oversight, and high-stakes decision-making. It also requires advanced professional mastery, strategic leadership, and supervision of complex, multi-layered programs. So in general, the scope, scale, and complexity of the proportion of the position supports its alignment to a director or executive level position. And with that, I would move on to winter recess. I'm sure our students here are aware that our winter recess begins Monday, December 22nd. For all students and for staff who have met their floating PD requirements. Students will return on January 6th, with staff returning the day before for a workday, January 5th. So with that, I would just say I hope everyone enjoys a peaceful and what appears to be a warm holiday coming up.
All right, Ms. Clapham, thank you for that report, Dr. Thompson. Ms. Clapham.
I just wanted for the public and for people, can you just give a brief what Title I versus Title II and Title III, just to help people understand like what that money is going towards, like broad
Sure.
strokes?
Yeah, so Title I goes to address our disadvantaged students. So it goes to our schools with high poverty. A lot of that goes towards extra staffing, professional development, class size reduction, those types of things. Class 2 is a lot of professional development and then recruitment and retention for staff. And Title III is actually for English language learners. We don't have enough that we get our own funding. It is through a consortium with the Black Hills Special Services Co-op. So that one would not affect our district as much, but Title I and II, we receive considerable amount of funds.
All right, board, any other comments or questions?
I do, but it didn't click.
Okay, Mrs. Stephenson. Stephenson.
I just wanted to thank you for the message that you sent out to staff and to other family students about the upcoming legislative session. I think, we had talked about that at the legislative committee about how important it is, and we've heard from parents and teachers to say, how do we know what's going on? It'd be nice to know when it's time to kind of call legislators and get people fired up. And so I appreciate it. I think the timing was great. We have the proposal. It gives legislators time to reflect on what they're hearing and hopefully enter the legislative session with a more solidified stance, hopefully for more than 0%. So I appreciate that. And I hope that is helpful for everybody who pays attention.
Thank you. We're hoping that as, families get together over the holidays, that our staff and our parents are able to just share the realities of the situation, so that everybody is informed.
Anybody else? All right, again, thank you very much for that report. At this time, Chief Financial Officer report, Mr. Sassy.
All right. Thank you, President Carr. We'll get my stuff up and moving here. So tonight, board, we're going to continue our series on some of the early budget indicators. And just a spoiler alert, this is also not exactly an uplifting conversation as we discuss enrollment. However, I do think it really highlights the extremely important nature that enrollment plays in the overall financial aspect of school systems here in South Dakota. So I think it's a very good conversation to be having right now. Obviously, there are lots of different methods for gathering and using enrollment data. For purposes of this conversation, I'm really going to be focused on what we call the SAFE count, or the state aid fall enrollment count. That has obviously a really significant impact on state aid to the general fund and special education fund, and then secondary impacts on many other areas. So there's different methods and different enrollment counts that districts across the state use. However, I think the most impactful is what we call the SAFE, or the state aid fall enrollment count. So what is the state aid fall enrollment count? That is the South Dakota Department of Education's yearly enrollment gathering process. It takes the enrollment count of all districts on the last Friday in September. This is, I think, a common misconception about this process. It used to be essentially a body and seat process of counting. So districts really encouraged pizza parties and all these different things to try to get every kid in a seat that they could on that last Friday. That is no longer how the process works for several years. What it does is take what the state calls an ADM, or an average daily membership count, of all registered students in the district at that point in the year. So if a student is absent that day, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are not counted. It's taking all the registered students up to that point in the year for that process. It then takes each student's class load and assigns a percentage of full-time equivalency. And so I won't reiterate all of this, but if you recall, oftentimes in the budget discussion that we have when we approve the final budget, I will show you a graph that has two separate enrollment lines, and one of them is generally higher than the other. And that's looking at actual body and seat enrollment versus this ADM count enrollment. And oftentimes what we see is that ADM count is lower because you have a percentage of students that has less than full-time class load. And so they're resulting in a lower average daily membership count. This number is then plugged into the state aid formula, and that ultimately determines the state aid revenue number that all districts get across the state. So if we look at our current state aid fall enrollment data for the fall 2025 count, the count that happened in September of this year, that count was 11,948 ADM. And that was just over a 2% decrease from the 2024 student count of 12,195. That is the district's low point in terms of enrollment over the last 20 years. The high point was 13,842 in 2014. Of course, we all understand the major turning point was post-COVID in 2019, when district enrollment fell by about 811 ADM, or about 6%. So a real steep decline in that 2019 year post-COVID. Enrollment has continued to decline since that point, but at a much slower rate. A lot of what I base our trends around when I look at enrollment and I look at trying to project those numbers are is looking out over a 5 and 10 and 15-year growth rate and trying to see what those growth rates are doing. And those average growth rates at this point are all negative. From a 5-year average, it's about a minus 1.17. A 10-year average is minus 1.3, and then a 15 is a minus 0.52. So really, when you think about the 15-year average, the longer average, we're essentially flat. We've gone up and then we've come back down, and we're back to a flat growth rate essentially. Here's what that looks like graphically. Again, here's that high point of 13.8. I can't see the year because my thing is blocking that, back in 2014. And then low point, of course, the current count in 2025. So talk a little bit about the state aid fall enrollment projection. This is extremely important, and you're going to see why here in a moment. So after the SAFE count is finalized in the fall of each year, districts are required to submit an estimate to the state for the next year's state aid fall enrollment count. This estimate is then plugged into the state aid formula, and districts are paid the first half of the next fiscal year based upon that estimate. So this is really crucial that we try to feel like we are putting out a good number, a number that is going to get us very, very close. Because what happens is after the count is finalized in the fall, the actual enrollment figure is plugged into the formula, and state aid is reconciled in the second half of the fiscal year. So that makes this estimate particularly tricky. For this year's SAFE estimate, again, that would be projecting out into what we think the estimate is, the count is going to be for next September. We used the number of 11,770 ADM, and that's about a 1.5% enrollment decline. And again, if we flip back to this 15-year average growth rate in our discussion, Dr. Thompson and I discussed and thought that that would be a good conservative number to use. And again, what we're looking for as we try to put our finger on a good number to use is hopefully a realistic number, a number that is going to come in at or below what we think the enrollment is going to be. So we don't see that big second half of the year adjustment that we've seen in the past as we've seen some of these steeper declines. I think the impact of enrollment is sometimes lost. I think even up to the legislative level, as we've discussed several times, the impact that enrollment has on the state aid formula and on school districts in general is not well understood, which leads to a lot of issues. That formula changed significantly back in 2017, but ultimately it's still enrollment driven. That's the first number that gets plugged in, and it has the biggest impact on the formula. And generally, it's pretty safe to say that if enrollment is increasing, that your state aid revenue is probably increasing. And conversely, if enrollment is decreasing, that your state aid revenue is probably decreasing. It's difficult for any of the other variables in the formula to make up for a loss of enrollment. For example, what we've seen, our district has seen over the past several years, even with the inflationary adjustments made to the target teacher salary, because of the downward slope of our enrollment, it has not been enough to make up for how enrollment impacts the formula. And so we see a decrease in state aid revenue from year to year, even with an inflationary increase, which again, I think is very difficult to understand. And oftentimes what leads to misconceptions at all levels throughout the conversation. The conversation gets particularly tricky when you start to factor in an increase in property valuation. So you all have seen this several times, and I know my technical skills still awe you all. But when we think about the idea of our resources fitting into this cup, if the cup is not growing, and again, the size of the cup is based on the need of the district, and the need is driven directly through the state aid formula, and it's based on enrollment, the target teacher salary, and the overhead factor. If the size of the cup does not increase, then essentially the resources of the district are capped. They're not going to move no matter what happens with any of these other factors. So if property taxes increase, but the overall need or the size of that cup does not increase, then state aid simply decreases. And again, that's what we've had play out in our community over the last several years. I think it's very confusing to stakeholders. It's very confusing to folks who are getting their tax bill and seeing their taxes go up and then hearing the message from the district that essentially our resources are flat and or declining. So it gets particularly complex as you start to look at how enrollment impacts that formula in the overall financial situation of the district. So in conclusion, I do think there is some good things happening, and I have been in contact with Elevate, and they have a really sophisticated analytics system, and they have an ability to show us exactly how our community is growing, in what segments, in what areas, by demographic, and they've been kind enough and nice enough to allow us to access a lot of information. I don't have it yet, but that information clearly shows that our city is growing both in size and in population. And I think one of the misconceptions that we often have about our community is that that's all happening in a older segment, retirees, and that's not true. Actually, the data that Elevate has says the exact opposite of that. And so I think those are all good factors. There's a lot of things happening, and I'd like to show you that data. Unfortunately, I didn't have it in time to incorporate into this, but we'll bring it back when it's ready. There's a lot of exciting expansion in the city. We've all heard about some of the different things happening with new facilities being brought in and lots of new opportunities for jobs. So I think there are positive factors that, of course, we have to look at in terms of how that influences enrollment and be ready for enrollment to take a turn backwards. However, what we need, and I've said this for the last probably 6 years at this point, more than anything as a district, to capitalize on the good things happening in our community is enrollment growth. That's what increases the size of this cup and ultimately will allow us to increase resources and address all those badly needed areas like teacher compensation, like compensation to a lot of our other groups. So with that being said, I will stop there and have, respond to any questions, President Carr.
All right, thank you for that. Board, any questions? All right, Mrs. Stephenson.
I don't really have a question because as part of the legislative committee and the finance committee, we've been given the information tonight. So if I looked bored, it wasn't that I was bored. I've just done a lot of processing of this already. And the comment that I have is, and I think I just think that we need to be transparent with the public, is with the enrollment numbers the way they are and with a projected 0% increase, that we might have some hard decisions to make as a district coming up as soon as next year. And having to take a look at where are we getting the most bang for our buck and what is happening that we can't justify in this environment. Like, we have to ask questions like, do the most good for the most amount of students? And that's hard. And that is not something that I really feel comfortable doing as a board member, but any opportunity that you have to educate us on where are we getting a lot of bang for our buck, and any direction you can give us about, I think it's worth checking out this program. I think this is it's worth asking these questions, or just so that as we approach, we're not coming in a situation in July where it's like, oh my gosh, actually we have to do this drastic thing, and the district doesn't know that it's coming, or the board doesn't know, or doesn't have enough knowledge to really make educated decisions on those. So
Yeah.
I appreciate this heads up now. I can see that you're laying the groundwork for those discussions, and appreciate it. And it's a hard time to run Rapid City area schools. So I appreciate the work you're doing and hope we can work together to keep the high quality things happening, so we can increase enrollment, so that we can get on a better track financially, and then we can, just
change the course.
Certainly. Thank you, ma'am. Really good comments. I think we are at a point, I've done this for a long time. This is my 17th year in school finance, and I don't think we're at a point where we can say specifically, here's what is going to happen with the budget. There's a lot of process to play out. Respectfully, I think there's a lot of posturing happening in the political environment in our state. I think there's a lot of things going on. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know that the governor's proposal will hold or not hold. Obviously, we're going to do all the work we can in between now and then to help our local folks and legislators across the state understand how that impacts not only our district, but all districts across the state. But you're correct. The likelihood that there are going to have to be really hard conversations and discussions and decisions going into next year is very high at this point. And we're going to try to do that as strategically as possible and in ways that disrupt our system in the most minimal amount that we can. And so as we continue, next subject will be state aid. We'll dive deeper into, again, how all these mix of cocktails impact that. And I think that that will really start to lay the groundwork for further conversations, especially as we move deeper into the budget process and ultimately into negotiations. So there's a lot of process to play out, and we'll see how it goes. But definitely keep the board informed and the community informed the best we can.
Mrs. Clapham.
It is a question that I'm pretty sure I know the answer to, but more kind of for increasing awareness and discussion. So yes, we have decline in student enrollment. However, is it an accurate statement to say our needs, like our percentage of special education students and students with needing other services, that percentage is actually progressively increased over this time? So even though we're talking about less human bodies per se, the needs of those bodies and thus the cost to provide services have likely increased. Is that a reasonable statement to make?
Not only is it reasonable, it's accurate. It's 100% accurate. And I think, again, we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting in the brief comments about the governor's budget proposal. Even the idea of linking a 0% inflationary increase to declining enrollment is false and inaccurate at the end of the day. And so when you think about how far school districts, including our district, have fallen behind when you look at the rate of inflation, you look at the continuing increase of needs that districts have in special education, even things like busing. So the cost of a bus in the last 15 years, the same bus, 77 passenger, has increased almost 100%. I remember ordering 88 passenger buses when I started this job at about $70,000 to $80,000. They're now $160,000. And so when you think about how costs have increased and inflationary costs and needs and all those things, we're not anywhere close to being able to keep up with that, with what's happened. And so with all due respect, I think it's extremely flawed thinking to say, well, enrollment has declined, so we're not going to provide an inflationary increase. It has such a dramatic impact on the financial makeup of districts across the state and the ability to respond to inflationary pressure while simultaneously trying to increase teacher compensation, which is, I won't even dive down that rabbit hole, but almost an impossible task. So yeah, I think you're 100% correct.
Dr. Thompson.
Thank you. I don't have a question, just a comment. I wanted to let the board know that in response to your questions we've had in the past about wanting more information about why students are leaving the district, I have asked Morgan Roberts, our new district data analysis, to dig into that. She is in the process of gathering and analyzing exit data for the district over the past several years. And we're hoping that that will give us some more insight into, why people may be not choosing to come here. And then we could address it.
Thank you for that.
Fantastic.
All right, any other questions, board, for Mr. Sassy? All right, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
At this time, we're gonna have a volunteering presentation by Ms. Veit and Ms. Donovan.
Good evening. For the public, my name is Kit Veit. I'm the Director of Student Success, and I'm going to be going through a presentation on our community pillar for volunteers alongside with Miss Bobby Jo Donovan, who is the College and Career Manager. Tonight, we're going to be going through what is on the community pillar for volunteers, as well as going through college and career readiness partnerships. We do have principal feedback on volunteers within the building, programming, alignment with our state report card, as well as a work-based learning goal.
Good evening. So as you have seen before, within the community pillar, one of the goals is to support and improve the educational experience. And the measure of success that was chosen for this pillar at that time was the number of district volunteers. So this goes back to when we first began with this strategic plan with a baseline number as well as a goal of where we wanted to be with volunteers. There's been a lot of conversation over our presentations regarding how this portion of the pillar looks. And the last time we had talked, we wanted to look at evolving what this metric looks like moving forward, which could potentially look at the volunteer or guest speaker check-in system, as well as the number of hours and volunteer reporting. So for your knowledge, there are 3 levels of volunteers within Rapid City area schools. The first level is a level 1, and this is really someone that's coming into the building. They're under immediate supervision of a school employee, pretty low level, and they just go through the background check, or per se, background check is really using the Megan's Law website, and that's for our sex offenders to make sure that they aren't a registered sex offender, but they don't have any direct contact with students, really. Level 2 volunteer is going to be where they might have direct or ongoing contact with students, and potentially out of line of sight or hearing within the supervising employee or a district employee. And so this could include field trip chaperones, dance monitors, so forth, helping in the classrooms or hallway work. And then our level 3, and then those volunteers are screened through what we call Background Check of America. And that goes in a little bit deeper, and it's tied to their social security number, but it's all done online that they fill out. And then our level 3 volunteer, these tend to be our higher level MOUs with some mentors coming into the buildings, volunteer coaches, those types of people. And these individuals really have direct one-on-one contact with students and potentially could be an overnight chaperone. And so our level 3 go through the fingerprinting, FBI background check. And with all of these, we do the sex offender check every year, and then we do the other 2 background checks on a every 3-year basis for those other volunteers. So when we talk college and career readiness and partnerships, if we look at what a partnership is, it's an external organization that collaborates within a school to achieve common goals, such as enriching the student learning, preparing students for the workforce, and providing resources. And so some examples when we talk partnerships and that terminology could be guest speakers, work-based learning experiences, so businesses or individuals that are providing work-based learning experiences for students, and advisory council members. So there's 3 levels of partnerships within our district currently. So we have a partner, an advocate, and a leader. So our partner are really people that are learning to enrich learning opportunities. So they are our guest speakers. They might be part of our student, like our 8th grade career fair that we just finished up last month. Maybe different types of competitions or class projects. I know some of you maybe even saw the invite about being part of mock interviews at Central and Stevens High School recently. So that falls under our part 1, our partner, that first partner portion. Advocate is probably a little bit more in depth. So they're providing an industry tour. They're working on informational interviews. They might be a pathway camp presenter. And then our level 3, or the top tier, is a leader. So they're providing our apprenticeships, youth internships, job shadows, teacher externships. They're part of our advisory councils. And it just digs a little bit more deeper into our pathways and pathways at the high school.
All right, so we sent out a survey to our principals on how do you utilize partners, and we needed that feedback so we can program moving forward. Out of all of our principals, 17 of them provided feedback on the surveys. So one of our first questions were, do you feel you currently have an adequate number of volunteers to meet the needs of your building? 16 of the principals said yes, and 1 said no. We also asked, what types of volunteers do you need? And they come into 3 themes. One is classroom and school day support, event and activity support, and mentoring and community partnership. With classroom and school day support, they were looking for volunteers who could help with lunchroom and recess playground support, especially when their building is short-staffed, classroom helpers or small group support, reading buddies or regular readers, one-on-one support, cutters for lamination cutting. One school is looking for volunteers who would like garden bed upkeep and general classroom assistance. With event and activity support, our schools are looking for volunteers for athletic support, football, wrestling activities, event support of Title I events, classroom events, PTA events, or special one-time events. Room parents or party planners, reflection volunteers, young life volunteers, or business partners who come in for special events or presentations, and then also field trip volunteers. With mentoring and community partnerships, our schools identified that they do have mentors and community partnerships with teammate mentors, Ateyapi, OLO, I Am Legacy, Diversion, and they're also looking for appropriate mentors for academic, cultural, and social needs. They would like increased community partnerships to provide trusted adults. And there is really the desire for more mentors. One of our other questions were recruitment, placement, and communication. Should that be with volunteers at the building level, or would you like additional support from the district? With that dark blue, 1 person stated that they would like additional district support. The light blue, 1 principal responded, no strong opinion either at the building or at the district level. The turquoise, one person responded, they would like a combination of both. 3 people responded that they would like additional district level support. With the green, one principal was impartial. With the yellow, one principal stated that district support is helpful. And half of our principals identified with volunteers, they would like to have the recruitment, placement, and communication at the building level.
Ms. Veit,
Yes,
can you go back?
yes.
So what does that mean that they would like?
So they would like the whole process of volunteers. We're going to get into it, I think, in the next couple of slides on type of volunteers and if the priority for volunteers. So when we're saying at the building level, they would like to, they only want to communicate with the volunteer themselves. They want to be able to give the communication, what their need for volunteering is, and be able to connect and contact that volunteer.
Okay, so if we, and I don't know who the we is, but if that wish was honored, then each school would have its own volunteer system.
They would control, yes, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
The next question we asked is, how would you identify your building's overall need for volunteers? One principal stated that it is a high need. 43.8% responded with a moderate need, and half of our principals stated that it was a low need. And then we really got into the reasons why. The limited need for volunteers. Many schools, particularly our middle and high schools, reported that they simply do not have a high need for volunteers. And their justification was middle school and high school students are more independent. Most supervision at the high school level must be completed by a certified staff. Activities and programs are handled internally by staff or student leadership. Some feel volunteers are only needed once a year for special events. The concern about the approval process making volunteering burdensome. Volunteers are not a current priority at some buildings, excuse me. Our buildings also identified that they already have a strong existing parent and community support. So one of the statements, feedback provided by a principal was good parent involvement with families actively asking how they can help. One building identified that they have an established community of helpers, which was Blackhawk. One building identified that volunteers are available when called upon. Successful involvement in fun activities such as parties and field trips. What we're proposing, and we don't need an answer, we only are proposing that volunteers be at the building level and that partners be our new community goal, and we're going to get into that, on how the community goal for partners aligns with the South Dakota Department of Ed new report card guidance for next school year, which Ms. Donovan will go over.
So currently, if you look at the college and career readiness measure on our report card, it's broken down into 2 areas, career readiness, or excuse me, college readiness. And in order to attain college readiness, they need to have an English readiness and a math readiness, excuse me. And then the career readiness piece is to have earned a silver or higher on the National Career Readiness Certificate. And then the coursework side is that they've earned an advanced endorsement on when they graduate high school. Students, most students that graduate, our graduation requirements are aligned to the standard, the advanced endorsement. So a majority of our students meet that coursework indicator. And so Unfortunately, the National NCRC, National Career Readiness Certificate, is no longer being supported by the state of South Dakota. And so in order to take that exam, it would cost a large sum of money. And so that is, they have removed that portion of the measure. So proposal, or not proposal, moving forward, beginning with 2026, they have aligned the college and career readiness measure for our report card. College readiness students need to be in either the advanced endorsement or the advanced honors endorsement. And so just a reminder, most of our students will graduate with at minimum the advanced endorsement. So most of our students are going to meet that college readiness side of things or more by going to the advanced honors. And then on the career readiness side, they would have to receive the advanced career endorsement, which really what that boils down to is our graduation requirements along with 2 CTE courses within the same cluster area, which several of our pathways support that happening. And so a lot of our students, if they stay within a particular pathway that they start with as a sophomore, earn that career readiness certificate, or excuse me, career endorsement already. Or for those students who don't, they can take at least 1 capstone experience. And we offer 5 different options for capstone experiences. So youth internship, senior experience, entrepreneurship experience, service learning, and youth apprenticeship are our 5 capstone courses. So by students taking a capstone or having that advanced career endorsement are the 2 ways that we will meet that portion of the measure within our state report card beginning in 2026. So looking at our community pillar, and if we look at support and improve the educational experience, and we look at our measures of success, the proposal is that we use the number of partners rather than the number of volunteers we have, use the number of partners that are providing capstone experiences for students within Rapid City area schools. Currently, and this is as of today, actually, we have 326 partners, active partners within the district that are supporting college and career readiness in our district. And so our goal by the end of this year would to be have that up to 333 if this were to be the new measure for the community pillar within the volunteer/community partner piece.
I want to stress that the goal from 326 active today to 333, which would be an increase of 2%, which is considered, standard practice for an increase of a yearly annual goal.
Okay, Ms. Urban.
I had a question about a couple slides back on the college and career measurement. So I don't know, 5 years ago when we put pathways in place, that was the thought that we were going to see that measure or that our score increase at the state level because we were going to have kids taking, CTE classes in the same cluster. Is that a reality? I mean, just not looking at the report card. I don't have it in front of me.
There has been an increase, I would say, in our college and career readiness scores, but when we changed from the academy model to the pathway model and expanded it away from the CTE courses to where students could take other courses and made it more pathways, we did not see the increase as it was intended or the hope. And so we still have seen an increase in our CCR score with that, just not probably where we would have liked to have seen it.
Okay,
I do foresee our college and career readiness score increasing with the new measure of the advanced career endorsement or the capstone course. And so the other piece to this is I do potentially see an increase in our capstone students at the junior, senior level. It has. So capstone has always been an offering, but it was never a measure within the report card. So we always encourage students, especially our seniors, to, once they have gone through those pathway courses as a sophomore and then a junior, to engage in one of those capstone experiences, a lot of them student internship, youth internship. And that's where a lot of our partners, the 326 active partners that we have, they have our students. They're housing our students and doing active internships with them.
Ms. Clapham?
I guess kind of question, comment. I appreciate the work on the survey that the outcomes were interesting from the principals, like a little bit surprising in some ways. I think I appreciate that now we know at like a building level, and I guess the question would then be, and this might be just to like, it's just for a thought out in the atmosphere. As President Carr mentioned, like, okay, so everybody, would you foresee still standardizing the process of how it's done? Because my concern is like, we talk about like silos and like, okay, we got 22 buildings and they're all doing volunteers a different way and it's a mess. And, you know, like, well, at this school you do it this way and at this school you do it this way. I completely understand like them wanting to, I see it as like build a community of their volunteers and that makes sense. But would there be a like, okay, this is how the process part has to work?
The process wouldn't change. So like the 3 types of volunteers and how they get their level of clearance, that would not change at all. It would just be that there would be more control on the building side of like, okay, maybe they sent out a newsletter and they have 100 parents who want to volunteer. We would still go through those different levels of clearance, so that process wouldn't change. They would just be able to determine what they would want to do. Maybe it's the garden bed upkeep.
Thank you.
Ms. Stephenson?
Yeah, I too appreciate the survey. I think it's kind of interesting. A little surprising and a little puzzling. I'm not sure that pie chart kind of I'm not sure how to read that. Was it kind of like half of the schools just want to do it on their own and half of the schools would like more support?
No,
Is that a summary?
let me get back to that. There was 4 people who wanted at the district and the rest. In hindsight, we should have had a yes, no, or a specific building district versus being able to give an answer. So when I converted it from an Excel spreadsheet to a chart, you know, it took every different little answer. But I
Yeah.
could go back through and recategorize it as a building district or both. Because there is 2 that would like both.
I guess what I find a little surprising is, yeah, I could see how some schools might say, no, we're good, we got this. And then I could see some schools just not even having the bandwidth to do it. Like, there are clearly schools in this district where parental involvement is really high. I've talked to plenty of principals, so I mean, I'm not an expert, but like, there's a lot of there are schools where parental involvement is high and there are schools where parental involvement is low. And like, do we have to have a broad, like, every school does this, where maybe there are schools that would appreciate district-wide support or support from RCEC to build a volunteer program and help with placement and find things to do?
Right. So I think to answer kind of both questions, this is more elementary, what is on the board, that classroom and school day support, and that would be that level 1 volunteer. And then kind of that level 1 bleeding into the level 2 volunteer would be the middle school, high school. So if you were to take a look at it on who wanted support and who did not, it was kind of, you know, the elementary is like a couple with hey, maybe we do need help. And that's where we would still do the level 1 volunteers. However, I think there needs to be that continual communication to those buildings that have low parental involvement of, hey, these volunteers are ready, here's their contact information. So there would still need to be communication.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the other piece to that is that when you look at that, it's asking for additional, so to recruit and find those. So for example, back to the mock interviews. So within the pathways, we identified that we needed to find several volunteers to help with mock interviews. And therefore we sent it out to the volunteer database and received quite a few. Those requests do not come in very, very often. It is very few and far between that we have a principal reach out that says, we need volunteers for X, Y, and Z. Can you send it out to your volunteer database?
But then is there a list from elementary, those level one that you were talking about, lunchroom duty? Those
Mhm.
came from principals. That was generated from principals.
It was, yes.
But they've never contacted you and said, I need
Mm-mm.
help with a lunchroom.
Nope.
So maybe they don't know that that's a possibility.
Well,
You know, or I could use help at the recess.
correct. And I would say that that is the possibility. So we do a volunteer, our volunteer coordinator, or the, Georgianne, who does our volunteer background checks and works, helps volunteers through that process, did do each principal, each building identifies a point of contact, and she communicates with them directly. And so that person or principal has not maybe reached out, correct?
However, that brings up a good point. We could let the principals know in our weekly communication of like, hey, if you have special events and are in need of volunteers, let us know so we can send communication to our current volunteers to see if they can go to your building.
Right. Yeah, to me, it seems like there might be principals who just don't have the bandwidth. Like, oh my gosh, I could really use somebody, but I haven't done it and they don't know. And if they don't know, they can ask, then they're not gonna ask. But I know community members who filled out the form and went through the process and said, they don't have a connection at a school. They're just, I'll go wherever you want, and then they don't get asked, except for the interviews. We got the mock
And they have been
interviews.
placed on those schools. So every week, on a weekly basis, there's a database or there's a report that gets sent out to the point of contacts of volunteers, approved volunteers for those buildings. And so at any point, let's say you're the point of contact at General Beetle, at any point you could pull up that email that comes through on Sunday to see who all your approved volunteers are and be able to reach out. So if a volunteer says they don't have a preference, that they want to be at any elementary, we will put them in on all elementary levels. So they do get a weekly report of all their approved volunteers, or people that are available. Now, do they have direct contact information for them? I don't know that they do, but that is something that Georgianne can easily provide or give them, reach out to those volunteers if there's something specific they're in need of.
Yeah. I feel strongly about this because I feel like it's so important in our community. If we have senior citizens who want to volunteer and aren't getting any opportunities, we're missing something, because those are people who might vote for the bond, and those are people who might, and then our kids are missing out on that. And so I will always have a fire for, could we be a little more proactive about getting these people in?
So, and I have no problem doing that, Christine. And I think Georgianne, I think we have ways that we can do that. I think it's the fact that I don't want to go out and request and recruit volunteers and then not have the places to send them.
But is there a way that principals could maybe get a little education, like a training, an hour-long training, utilization of volunteers in your schools? Here's how you do it. Here are the things that we can recruit.
Yeah, we can
people
definitely
for.
look into something. We can,
I just
you know,
feel
we
like
can
principals
see.
don't have the bandwidth. They're so busy. But I know that my kid in second grade could benefit from a retired teacher coming in and helping out in the classroom when they don't have a sub, you know, have somebody to call and say, hey, can you help out for 2 hours in the classroom? But it doesn't happen. And I'm not blaming anybody. I'm saying,
Right.
Are we not being creative enough with our use of volunteers? We have to utilize all of our resources, and there's a whole list of volunteers that don't get asked to volunteer.
So I will look to see what type of professional development or training we can do for principals, just to help them see how they can maybe utilize volunteers more. I'm more than
I
happy.
mean, I don't want to force volunteers on principals, but I feel like they made a list, but they aren't asking for it.
Mhm.
We'd like help at recess, but we don't get asked for it.
I think the other thing that sometimes is difficult is the timing of it. So your lunchroom monitor calls in sick, and so sometimes it's difficult to find somebody last minute. And so I think that's hard. Some of the things like mock interviews, you can sign up, volunteer for ahead of time. That's an easy ask because people can block it out on their calendar. But it's kind of like being a substitute teacher. You don't know when you have the availability, or that morning you decide to take a job. Kind of the same thing I would say potentially with volunteering. I know we probably do have people that could probably be called and show up the day of. I think that would be a little bit more of a challenge also. And it would be hard because, and who would make that phone call then, right? And ask for that? Would it be at the building level or would that be at the or at the district level? So there would be a chain of communication, and then how does that look? Does that make sense, what I'm saying? Yeah,
Yeah, it does sound like more work.
which I'm not opposed to more work, but putting the system in place that would make it beneficial for buildings and not more of a burden would be the one thing.
Hey, Dr. Thompson?
I just wanted to clarify that in January, when we meet for the board retreat to go over strategic planning, the Pillar Champions will be recommending a switch from a volunteer metric to a partnership metric, which is aligned to the new state report card metric for college and career readiness. That will be up for discussion, of course, and input from the board, but we wanted to give you this information in preparation for that conversation.
Mrs. Urban?
I think that metric makes sense, just to comment on that. But I will say, Christine, I feel like when you talk about bandwidth, I think that's true because I think some principals, it's more work to handle volunteers and make sure they're getting in and assigned. And that's the impression that I've gotten just as a parent, is that it seems like kind of a burden. But I wonder, not just only communicating with principals about a training, but even just saying like, hey, teachers, do you know this is available? Because maybe they would go to their principals and say, actually, I could use a person on Monday afternoons or whatever. And I don't get the impression that they know that's available. I might be wrong, but that's just my personal experience.
All right, Mrs. Rafferty?
First of all, I appreciate all the research you guys put into this. And I also know that at the beginning of the year, at the elementary level, teachers will put out a form asking for parent volunteers in the classroom. They'd like to be room party parents, if they'd like to volunteer to put books away. I mean, there's various jobs, and the parents do have opportunities to volunteer in the classroom, and the teachers most of the time will use them. Every school is unique and every school is different, and we do appreciate our volunteers and the time that they put in our schools.
Mrs. Clapham?
Just a quick clarification to kind of, as this discussion has evolved, I want to clarify. So one of the things Ms. Stephenson is saying, well, and principals don't have bandwidth, but I'm hearing the term point of contact. There can be a point of contact for volunteers that is not the principal. Is that accurate and correct? So that's another thing.
That's correct.
Clarified, like that there's two, we're saying like, so not opposed to training, not opposed to like, we're getting feedback for the principals, but I think another thing we're talking about here, we're possibly talking about two different things, because some of the things saying, well, a principal doesn't have, some of this isn't a principal, this is whoever the volunteer contact, who may be the attendance secretary, who may be also the lunchroom, it may be a totally different person. So that's another thing I think, and I hear President Carr saying, go back upstairs. But to not get into these, but to just understand that when we're talking about like training and who we're communicating, we may not actually be talking about a majority of principals. We got the feedback from the principals, but the volunteer contact may in fact be a completely different person.
I would say 90% of the point of contact is not the principal.
Not the principal.
And we can do a reset on the communication all the way down to teachers on, we have this available. We have volunteers available with the database, and do a better job on communication.
Yeah, I just think it's important to know, like, we're not, and I know our principals are very, very busy, but that we're not in essence being like, okay, principals need to call like, that's not really in essence for the most part what's happening.
All right, I think, thank you for the work that you've done. I appreciate the survey. And I think it's important that when you are asking a question and people give you the answer, then you believe the answer that they're giving you and not say, well, that's not really what they want or don't want. I would have thought that there would have been more excitement for volunteers than the survey indicates. But again, you ask the question, they give you the answer. Okay, then that's what the answer is. And I think for for me, whatever the volunteer process is, when it's presented to us, I would like it to be a district-wide process, whether you have high needs of volunteers or no need of volunteers. So the district-wide process would be, if you need a volunteer, you email, right? So every school knows that we email. Now, a school that doesn't need volunteers, don't need to email. A school that needs volunteers every day, then they will email every day. So that's where I am, that the process is not scattered between 23 different schools. It may be part of the process that you use or part of the process that you don't use, but everybody has the same process. And that would be my fear, that, everybody's kind of doing different things.
This is actually in policy, so we would have
Yeah.
to do a policy change to change the volunteer process. So,
Yeah.
no, the process would never change. I think what we're getting back to is that we can support, the process of being a volunteer or finding volunteers isn't gonna change. It's how the schools utilize the volunteers or request the volunteers, I think, is the challenge to it. And how we can support those buildings.
Anybody else? Question, comments? Thank you. That was very informative. Appreciate that. All right, this is a unique situation on our agenda. We have a school board presentation and a committee recommendation, and so we'll turn it over to Dr. Thompson.
Thank you. I am obviously not a member of the student school board. However, Trenton Polisky, a student at Stevens High School and president of the RCAS Student School Board, was planning to present tonight and had a medical reason why he cannot be here. And I know he is very disappointed about that. So I'm going to provide just a little bit of background information, and you have a handout as well. And then Trenton is planning to be here at the next board meeting. So Trenton has worked with Representative Rice to develop a House bill that would allow schools to provide students a half of a PE credit for participation in school-sanctioned athletics. The RCAS Student School Board has written a memorandum, which you have a copy of, in support of this bill, and they would like the school board's permission to send this to all legislators. As I said, Trenton does plan to be at the next school board meeting to share a brief presentation about the bill and answer any questions that you may have about it. And the memorandum will be on the consent agenda at that time for your consideration and possible approval. If you have questions, I would be happy to put those down and send them to Trenton in advance so that he is prepared and could answer those. But I guess I'll stop there.
All right. Well, I'd just like to say, Trenton, if you're watching, I hope you get better and look forward to your presentation. Any questions or, Mr. Swan?
Thank you, President Carr. It talks about athletic participation, and I know that we have a high number of band members that are involved, and that can sometimes just be as rigorous, I think, was there any consideration for that? I mean, that's just a question I'd like to ask Trenton to see, because there are,
Yeah,
I know
believe,
athletics, there is an amount of preparation in band. It's also the same. I mean, you see them all the time. They participate in parades, things like that. So.
yeah. I am not an expert on this, but there is already a provision in codified law that allows for participation in fine arts to count as credit. So he can talk to that more, but I think that already is in existence.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Ms. Urban.
Yes, on the back page under number 4, it's item 4.3. That talks about that it aligns with existing policy allowing students to earn fine arts credit. So yeah.
All right, anybody else? Mrs. Clapham.
So quick clarification. So on the consent agenda, and so this is saying this is coming from the student school board. So we would be approving it still coming from the student school board,
Correct.
not necessarily, because I know, and I'm not gonna get into the weeds, but I know there are some logistical things that, that we aren't necessarily landed on as far as like certified staff and other things like that. But so we're basically saying like, because they are a committee of the board, we are saying, yes, we saw this and it's okay, but not saying, putting our name as a board on it.
That is correct. The letter would come directly from the student school board.
Ms. Stephenson.
Thanks, Jamie. That was exactly my question. And then are we gonna put it on the consent agenda then, or are we gonna put it as an item for board action if Trenton's gonna be here in case we have any questions, or will we just pull it from the consent agenda?
That is an action item. This is the informational part of that. And so if we don't have any questions for him at that time, when we do the agenda, we can either make it a separate item, which would be cleaner than pulling it from the consent agenda, especially if we think we're going to ask questions. So that's probably how it will be handled on the agenda as a separate action.
That makes sense to me.
Also for clarity too, where the school board was offered also to make a recommendation, and we are not, because of those different things that we'd have to work out before we even agreed to it. And so what technically you all are doing is really allowing, and I think it's pretty powerful that our student school board, that we will allow the student school board to make a recommendation or a suggestion that we ourselves have not debated about, decided about, whatever. So that's what your vote is going to be, whether to allow them to send this recommendation to the legislature. So that everybody's clear on that and the community's clear on that we're not necessarily endorsing the suggestion or idea, but allowing that suggestion to be made on the legislative ledger. Yes, ask your question.
Do they need our permission to do that?
Well, of course, yes, they do. They would need our permission because technically, that request should have gone through the superintendent. As I said in the board, in the leadership meeting.
None of the other committees of the board would address the legislator in that matter without it
agree.
having gone through the
Correct.
entire school board. So yes, I do believe they would need the board's permission to do that. The legislative committee, for example, doesn't act on their own on a particular bill without having talked to the entire school board and gotten permission to do that. If an individual student on their own wanted to advocate for the bill, they could do that as a person, but not as the student school board.
Any questions? All clear on what we're going to be voting on next board meeting? Okay. We have no conflict of interest. I'll entertain a motion to approve the proposed agreements and MOUs.
I'll motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the proposed agreements and MOUs. Any discussion?
Can there be discussion like broadly on all of them? Just, I
Sure.
don't know, okay, discussion.
Okay.
Just really quick, I want to say sometimes, I think we talk about like goals and initiatives, and I just want to point out the things we hear so often staff or community saying like, we don't talk about like real life things, and like this beef in the classroom is like food handling and kitchen and the same thing. You know, and so it's like we are doing that, and we talk about retaining our staff, and this is a agreement to mentor our staff and help retain them. And then our support staff, and we talk about like, how do we retain our bus drivers and our nutrition? And so I just wanted to point out, like, we do like we are walking the walk here. We're not just like talking a bunch of fluff and saying like, oh, we need to keep teachers, but what are we doing? Like, we're trying to mentor them. Oh, we need more bus drivers and nutrition staff, but what are we doing? And so I just want to point out sometimes like consent agenda, we're tired, we vote, move on. But that we are investing financially, time and resources into the things that we believe this district needs. And so for the public, I think sometimes it's easy to just like scroll by and, oh, I don't know what that was, but that we are doing the things we say we need to do to make this district better. That is all.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor of accepting and approving the proposed agreements and MOU signify by saying aye.
Aye.
If you oppose, signify by saying no. Motion carries. Any item under the consent agenda a board member would like to pull for discussion? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Motion carries. All right, items for board information, any committee reports?
Rock, paper, scissors.
Well, I don't know, which.
I can do legislative committee.
I've just pulled up the notes.
Okay, then you go ahead.
Ms. Stephenson?
I pulled up finance, I pulled up. I'm not gonna get too much into finance. I think that Katie, if I would agree that we talked a lot about what Coy presented tonight and about the meaning of that in the upcoming budget and, some of what I said tonight too is that like, if we need to take a hard look at things, the board needs to have as much notice and, needs to be a part of that discussion because we're what you all vote on hard things. So, that was the finance committee. The facilities committee, we talked about, Bobby has started to work with a marketing company to help the district with its informational part of educating the public about this bond that we're going to be asking for. So we worked on some slogan ideas and how we can, as a district, educate our stakeholders, which is the whole community, in an effective way that really expresses the need and why we as a board are voting on it. So that was a good discussion. I don't know if I have much more to say about that other than the things are in motion. We're gonna have a website. We're gonna have a lot of stuff by the time we vote on it. The CHS library, we learned, as we heard tonight from Marissa, that it will be ready for staff over the break and then for students in January. And there will be a ribbon cutting and we ask that the board get invited to that. And then that's where my notes stop on facilities. Do anybody have any more? I think. Yeah, I think that's the end of facilities. Jamie, do you have legislative notes or I can pull mine up?
You want to pull yours up?
I'll pull mine up. Legislative was a lot of talk about how we can best advocate in the face of for state funding. And as a committee, we decided that we wanted to be sure that our legislators know us and have us on their speed dial. So we, again, kind of divided up legislators and have started calling them, reaching out, just having conversations about some of what Coy has presented about what the budget, what it would look like if we got 0% and how that impacts us. We talked about an average enrollment bill. It sounds like there are a couple representatives who are interested in drafting and sponsoring an average enrollment bill. And Coy told us that if we had that in place, if we had it in place before next year, which is a long shot, I mean, that's that's probably not gonna happen, but just hypothetically speaking, if that were in place for next year, it would probably increase our state aid by $1 million. So that averaging bill is not nothing, and if it does get sponsored, that would be a kind of an all hands on deck reaching out to let our legislators know how much that helps public schools and Rapid City area schools in particular, but not only Rapid City area schools. As we have learned, there are a lot of schools with decreasing enrollment. We talked about the 0% need. I already did that. There will be a student nutrition bill for us to pay attention to. Last year, oh my gosh, Coy, the name of the
Kid and women.
Kaden Whitman, Representative Whitman had brought a bill to the floor. It made it out of committee last year. I think the first year she brought it, it didn't make it out of committee. Last year it made it out of committee. She's bringing it back again this year. So our portion of what this would mean to the district is probably about $200,000 a year and in case you don't know, it would be the state paying for the difference between the reduced lunch, so that kids who qualify for reduced lunch but not free lunch would just get a free lunch. That would help with some of our student nutrition debt. And then we talked about the federal funding and trying to reach out to our senators to thank them for their proposal to just keep things steady and reach out to our legislator about the House bill, which would be a considerable loss to our funding and would have a direct impact on our students and our ability to educate future Rapid citizens. So I think that was a summary of the legislative session or the legislative committee meeting.
Ms. Stephenson, can the full board get an email of what board member is calling what legislature person?
Thank you, because I only wrote down the ones that I was.
I can send that to you.
Thank you very much. All right, Mrs. Urban.
I think my committee reports are pretty much covered. The only thing I wanted to add, considering Representative Whitman's bill, is that I think it'd be nice as a board, and we've talked about this at leadership, to endorse it in a bigger way than we typically do with just some of the different bills that are going through. I know the Sioux Falls School Board has done that, and I think it would be meaningful coming from us as well.
Okay, I think in order for that to happen, we'll need to be reminded or a date or something. Otherwise, we'll.
So maybe once it actually gets dropped in the session, we could put something on our, like we could write a letter and put it on our agenda and then approve it.
All right, any, Mrs. Rafferty.
So for instructional committee, we met last month and we met before this board meeting today. Last month, we discussed French 2, which is being offered at Central High School. So they started with French 1, and they had over 100 students in French 1.
Oh, wow.
And then they decided to go to French 2. Now there's 60 students enrolled in French 2. This is such a really successful program. They're considering possibly French 3. So that's up for discussion next. And so we're still doing some more review on the pilot program for English language reading. And so they're on their second pilot right now. So we're hearing some good things.
Okay.
The French, is that at both Central and Stevens?
It's just, right now it's just at Central.
Interesting. That was a huge pain point when they got rid of it. So it's interesting that they're bringing it back.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have any big feelings about it, but it's just interesting.
Anybody else? I think this goes under the outreach committee. I attended the listening session at Rapid City Alternative Academy. And for whatever reason, I thoroughly enjoyed that discussion with the students. As with all these listening sessions go, those of you that went, it starts off pretty slow. And in fact, it doesn't quite get started. But by the time we were done, there were students coming up to each board member and asking questions and what about this and can we do that? And I just thoroughly enjoyed the feedback. One, because it answered one of the questions that the board had considered about that facility and about those programs and where they should be. And we got strong opinion about that suggestion. So that was awesome.
And to piggyback, just, there's kind of an open, so their student council meets at that
Yes.
time from, is it like 11:15 to 11:45? Every Monday, and they said they would be more than happy anytime any board member has time to come by. It's their student council, they just started a student council there this year.
This year.
So they pretty much said an open invitation if anybody wants to come by and chat or meet with them, you're ever available on Monday, kind of during lunchtime, that they would.
Mondays?
Yep, and pretty much, I think it's every one, so they said,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it is, so. Obviously you could definitely email Scanna to verify, but they said, oh, that would be a great time to come by, so
Yeah, it was
if
awesome.
you're ever interested.
All right, anything else? I almost put up my agenda. Sure. Okay.
So Jamie, Christine and I attended the Elevate Christmas Mixer and we had our nice buttons that Bobby made for us. And it basically said, talk to me about the bond. And we did a lot of talking about the bond and just facilities and trying to educate people. So that was a great opportunity. And then we also, a number of us attended the Elevate Critical Issues Luncheon where they also mentioned our need here in Rapid City. And as you've said before, Bishop Carr, the mayor talked about after doing an analysis that our school facilities are kind of a weakness in our community. And so it's nice to be out in the community and hear that there's already some conversation and some buzz going. And my understanding is that we're going to be getting some more information and talking points out to families about our facilities before Christmas break. That was something that we discussed at facilities.
All right, awesome. Well, the train is out the station and we're moving along. Ms. Clapham.
Just really quick, it's kind of from Associated School Boards. And just a reminder, and I remember because I put on my calendar, so Public Education Day at the Capitol is February 9th. That's a Monday. So for people who are able to come, I'm 95% sure I'm going. I think it's going to be a larger turnout than last year. I think we really, to show the legislature our voices and numbers and say, you know, public ed is important. As many of us can go and, you know, families, whomever, you know, it's open to everyone. There's no registration. We want to be there when they are in the rotunda to be able to talk and see faces and real people. So for anybody able to plan and make that happen, or if you want to carpool or whatever, but just a reminder that it'll be February before we know it. So to have that on your calendar and be aware.
Maybe Dr. Thompson will close school down and we'll take all 11,000
Students, that'd be amazing parade.
We should take the student school board.
Yeah, we don't have quite enough buses for that.
Boy, we need more buses.
Yes. They're only $160,000.
Oh, wow. All right, any other? Well, actually, we're on any others?
Happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays to
Enjoy the break.
everyone. All right, we didn't take executive session. I had planned on doing something to ask some questions in that, but that's coming down from the skybox, so we'll let you. Yeah, well, to hear?
Yes. Well, based on your.
Well, I didn't need her for that part. It was just gonna be personnel conversation. Did she text me? Okay, I mean, we can't go in there to.
I mean, if she's here.
All right, I'll entertain a motion. I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session 1.1-25-2.1 and .3.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to go into executive session. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. We will be leaving.